I used it for less than 2 or 3 days before just knowing, oh, this is it. This is it for me. This is the next chapter of how I experience mobile technology.
Michael Fisher, welcome to IFA 2023. How are you doing today?
Doing very well. This is my first time back at IFA in like 4 years or something. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, how are you finding Berlin so far?
I'm relieved to find that all my classic watering holes are still intact. I'm going to Burgermeister later in the trip. I can't wait.
That's the most important thing. Just make sure all the food and drinks places are prepped up.
That's right. The Ferns Term bar is waiting for me.
So I'm sure a lot of people already know who you are with your YouTube channels, but just for people who might not know your background, can you give us a little introduction to what you do and what you like doing?
I mostly make YouTube videos about smartphones and smartphone accessories at a channel called Mr. Mobile, and I tweet about those same subjects under Captain Two Phones. And I've been doing that for 12 years.
Bit of a dream job in many ways.
It is a bit of a dream job. Yeah. Every time I think about complaining, which I still do, I'm like, no, stop it. you have a great job. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's always the way though. Work always feels like work in a sense.
Yeah. Oh, I got to go to Berlin again.
Ugh. Got to go to Burgermeister. What's going to happen?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So what are you excited about phone-wise at the minute? What are the devices? Because there's always this thing, I think, that we had this initial period of mobiles being out of this world and having the craziest designs.
When phones were fun. Yeah.
Exactly. And now we've moved into, as we've discussed before, the rectangular slab days. What are you seeing that's still exciting you, still getting that fire under your belly?
So stuff that breaks that monotony. It's like stuff that is not yet another reformulated rectangle. And not just because of the novelty. So I'm talking about foldable phones. And it's not just a matter of them being new. A lot of people will accuse foldables of gimmickry, and it's not. They legitimately changed the way I've used my smartphone. Being able to carry around a phone that turns into a tablet on demand means that I take my laptop out 20% less frequently now. And having all that space to spread out on has meant that I don't pick up my Kindle anymore. I don't pick up my iPad anymore. It's really changed my mobile tech habits, and that is something that really hadn't happened with any of the previous iterations of design.
Was there a moment where that started to happen? Because now we're, I don't know how you'd say, 4 or 5 generations into foldables?
Right, yeah, and it was right at the beginning.
Really, so as soon as you picked one up?
As soon as I bought that first one in January 2020. And I bought it because at the time it was the Samsung Galaxy Fold, and Samsung wasn't seeding review samples. I used it for less than 2 or 3 days before just knowing, oh, this is it. This is it for me. This is the next chapter of how I experience mobile technology, because I can never go back now. And I did. I would have to go back to reviewing other more conventional phones, and every time I did, I felt more limited. And I mean, I had the bad luck of ending up in the hospital for 5 days shortly after that. And I was so glad to have that foldable with me, because I didn't have anything else with me. But it replaced those other devices that I would have wished I had, the Kindle and the iPad. I didn't need them, because I already had them in my pocket. It was cool.
So what do you think then is stopping? Because I love the way that you're selling it. It's making me really want to go get a foldable.
Thanks.
But what is it that you think is stopping this widespread adoption? Why is it that? And I did this. I talk from personal experience. Where I live, Amsterdam, I can't say I don't think I've ever seen anyone with a foldable.
Really?
Yeah. And it might be different in New York.
It's very different in New York.
I've not lived in London for a few years. It might be different there as well. But there does seem to be a divide now where, people aren't using them in maybe the way that some of those companies expected. What do you think is happening?
Yeah, I think last year they said they got up to 1.4 or 1.7% global market share for foldables. I think their price is a massive consideration. And we're talking about the large format foldables so far in this sit down. Like, those are $1,800. That's an awful lot of money to splash on a device. And on top of that, it is objectively more fragile. They are not as fragile as a lot of people think they are. Like, I will hand my foldable to somebody and they kind of treat it with kid gloves. I'm like, no, you can throw it around, it's fine. But you can't expect them to endure the kind of abuse that a traditional slab phone can. So you've got those issues, and they're still big and heavy, aren't they? Mm-hmm. Physics has not given us the capability yet to make them quite as small or as portable as a standard phone. So those things together, I think a lot of people are content to sit on the sidelines and still wait. But I think I'm pleased that not only have manufacturers like Samsung not given up, they've doubled down, and then every other mobile manufacturer in Android of note has at least one foldable on offer. Like it's a thing. It's a movement.
Yeah,
I'm pleased about that.
There's a very interesting. Would you see the launch of the Pixel Fold, which you
Yes.
have right there for people watching on the video stream?
Yes.
Would you see that as a watershed moment for foldables?
I think because it's made by Google, I think Google would like it to be a watershed moment for foldables because as the company that makes Android, it is making a declaration with this device. Like, hey, we take foldables seriously. And we want developers to build apps that leverage foldables to the max. Unfortunately, Google's been here before with tablets. And it tried a decade ago to make tablets a thing. And developers kind of shrugged and didn't build a lot of tablet apps for Android, and that's still the situation we're in today. So I'm happy they're trying again. There is a bit more progress than there has been before, but I think it's still going to be a long road.
Do you think it needs a company like Apple, foldables, to come into the market?
I do, because I always have the same conversation when people see me use these things in public. Whether it's the Razr, I'm paying for coffee with my Motorola Razr, or I'm using the Fold on a plane, people are like, "What? Oh, is that one of the new Foldables? Oh my! I love. Can I please? Oh!" And they really 80%, 90% of those interactions are positive, and they always say the same thing to the point where I can mouth along with them. I really want one of those. Of course, I'd never leave my iPhone, so I guess I can't have one. When Apple decides to make a foldable iPhone, I think they will do very well.
I can see that. But then I guess the next question is, what sort of time frame, right? Because the most likely guess is that there's a technological element that they're waiting for to hold back. And you mentioned before, the fragility is one, the thickness you've mentioned before.
Yep.
There could also be issues, I guess, with battery life or...
There can be. Those are getting ironed out, though. I think, and especially with a company like Apple, where they have the processors that are so efficient that they don't need to put in as big a battery in an iPhone as we need on the Android side. And that is true to the extent that Apple decided to start making iPhones out of stainless steel because it just felt better. It felt like a higher quality product, and they could afford the margin for the weight because they didn't need a big battery in there. So I think Apple can solve a lot of the mechanical problems. I think this screen, some foldables have a problem where the screen will spontaneously fail because I don't actually know why. Maybe it's the ultra-thin glass, maybe it's another factor. And I think maybe once Apple is confident that that will not happen to it, that'll be the moment. But I have heard rumors of not dubious quality that they're starting orders for flexible displays. So we might see something as soon as, 2025 maybe.
Yeah, that would be a huge moment if something like that came through.
It would.
And to see if they could define that future.
Yeah. And everyone will, a rising tide, right? Everyone who builds foldable phones then will be incentivized to make them even better. And as you mentioned, we're 5 generations in. The Samsungs are pretty darn good. I can't imagine the benefits that Apple flavor of pressure will bring even to the Android world, if you prefer that.
So if we're looking, we can include foldables in this as well, but if we're thinking 5-10 years in the future, how, or even 20, however far you want to go, how do you think our personal devices, our phones change? It seems like you're pretty sure that we'll move into foldables, which I think makes sense. If a foldable is the same size as an iPhone, but you can get double the screen, why wouldn't you buy one?
Right. Or if it's the size of an iPhone and it folds down to half that size, like they could go the flip direction too.
Exactly. Why wouldn't you?
Right. Because with a flexible display, you can do that, right? You can slap it onto your wrist like a cuff. And I think ZTE announced a phone here at IFA a number of years ago that actually turned into a wrist bracelet. So there's that possibility. I think a lot of people talk about the AR glasses as being like kind of a far future idea of a phone replacement. But one thing I'm really very grateful to have stumbled upon recently was a pocket watch in a museum. And I asked the guy behind the counter, I'm like, what year is this from? Thinking he was going to say something like 1912, because I always associate pocket watches with, Titanic.
Yeah. Big mustaches.
Yeah, absolutely.
Suspenders.
Bowler hats.
Yeah.
He's like 1780. And I'm like, and it looked like a regular pocket watch. And then I looked it up, and the first pocket watch was made in 1510. So for hundreds of years, people are carrying around this device that kind of looked the same. So I think that smartphones will change. I think flexible displays will take over because that multimodal approach is just better. But I don't know that we need to get rid of our little pocket boxes. Maybe that's just the best solution for a while.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense, right? We wear glasses that have been worked in a similar way.
Yes.
Monocles didn't really take off.
Right. Yeah, sadly.
Yeah,
They're
well-
classy looking.
Well, it goes very well with the pocket watch system.
Absolutely. Get some chains on your body. I like it.
Well, that's it, I guess, for designs. A phone is got pretty close to, perfection is a strong word to use, but there's a reason why pretty much as it can be
Plateaued,
boring, there's a
yeah.
reason why every manufacturer goes that way, because people like how they feel, they work well, they're
Right.
resilient.
It's mature, yes. But that's I like the disruption of the flexible display to that, to make it more adaptable to your needs in the moment. But ultimately, it's still going to be a thing you carry in your pocket for a long time, I think.
Yep. Well, Michael Fisher, thank you very much for your time and joining us at this
Thank you.
IFA 2023 podcast.
Oh, very happy to be here. Thank you for having me, and I hope we can do it again.
Yeah, catch you next year.
Sounds good.